Hi, I'm Tom Fitton, President of Judicial Watch, with our weekly update here on Facebook Live. Thanks for joining me. Lots to talk about, as always, this week. It's an extraordinary period of time in the beginning of the Trump administration as the President takes some proactive steps that are significant in terms of protecting our borders, protecting our national security, and causing the left to go ballistic in a way that has provoked all sorts of crises in terms of the rule of law, our constitutional order, and whether our government, frankly, is just working properly. So a lot to talk about in that regard. We've had a Supreme Court nomination this week. We'll talk about the immigration executive order related to keeping some of the bad guys out of the country. Obviously, we'll talk about that. New Clinton emails that you may be interested in hearing about, and a story about presidential travel that shows you that Judicial Watch asks questions of the president no matter who's in office. But first up, late on Friday, the president signed an executive order temporarily suspending suspending the ability of individuals from 7 countries that had been deemed problem children by even the Obama administration, countries decimated by the war caused by ISIS and in the Middle East, like in Syria, Yemen, Libya, etc. And the liberal media and its leftist allies on the outside went crazy over that. Some 100 people or so were caught up immediately in the temporary hold, meaning they were traveling here and got caught up in airports. So, of course, the left ran to court, and the ACLU and the usual suspects went into court suggesting all sorts of terrible things were going on. And obviously those people were let through quite easily once some of the kinks were ironed out in the implementation of this executive order. But it's a sensible order. It's a temporary ban related to countries where there's a high risk of where there's virtually no ability to check on people coming from them because the governments are completely shut down or are not trustworthy. And so the president was right, at least temporarily, to ban refugees and others from coming there into the United States. It's one of the top things he's supposed to do as president, which is protect the safety of the country. And the least he could do is a temporary ban on this. And I was also pleased to see him yelling at the Australian Prime Minister, if reports are to be believed, about the lame duck deal that President Obama made to take in refugees from Lord knows where that are currently being detained by Australia. You know, Australia is a great ally of the United States, but we don't want their national security problems to be foisted unnecessarily onto the United States. And Trump was right to complain about the deal, and I think he should back out of it, and the American people deserve more about it, to know more about it. But when you look at this EO deal, this executive order that he issued on immigration, you see just how crazed the media is in opposing Trump. They've been misreporting key facts about it. It isn't a Muslim ban, and there's no sensible person out there who wants a Muslim ban per se. The president has used that in his campaign. But that's not the reality of anything he's proposing. In the least, we need to be questioning individuals, certainly from many countries, whether or not they are coming here to undo our system, whether they agree with our Constitution, or whether they're frankly terrorists. And that should be asked of every person coming into the United States. It currently isn't done. The vetting is not done appropriately. And as a result, Americans are being placed at risk. And of course, the refugee system is a complete mess. The refugee flows have been used to disguise terrorists coming into the countries in Europe. Our national security establishment has made it clear they have no good ways for vetting refugees from these areas like Syria. And so why place us at risk just to make people feel good about themselves, because the real problem related to the war in Syria that is causing so much death and destruction is not being alleviated by allowing an immaterial amount of refugees coming into the United States. So you have all these court actions. The institutional left is showing its power by going to court, using state resources, and also dragooning and misusing federal resources to oppose the president. And, we have a right to dissent, and certainly, but the government, my gosh, the government at the federal level, it works for the people, and the people's representatives are now in the White House, like it or not. Some of you probably didn't vote for Trump, like some of you didn't vote for Obama. But no one would disagree that if the policy is lawful and however much you find it distasteful, as a government official at the federal level, you're supposed to implement it. But here we had an Obama holdover at the Justice Department. Sally Yates refused to enforce the law, and Trump, to his credit, fired her almost immediately. I tell you, the Justice Department has been ruined by President Obama, and he can't get Sessions in there soon enough, or his appointees in there soon enough to clean house. And you can see why the liberals are delaying in historic fashion the nominees of President Trump for his cabinet. There's simply no historic precedent to have so many unconfirmed cabinet officials, and it's designed to allow the Obama holdovers and the alt government, as I call it, that opposes Trump, to keep on getting in the way of his being able to implement his lawful policies. And let's be clear on that. If we had more cabinet officials in place, we wouldn't have some of the problems we're hearing about, which include, by the way, agency officials and bureaucrats conspiring to oppose Trump by using secret communication apps to discuss how it is they can thwart President Trump's agenda. Well, that's, first of all, if they're doing it on government time, it's arguably illegal. And again, like if they're creating documents about government business and keeping those secret, that would be illegal as well. I can't imagine. It just shows you just how lawless the city is, that even after the Clinton email scandal, you've got government officials still trying to think of ways to keep documents that belong to you, the people, away from you. But there's a real crisis in town, and for those of us interested in watching what the government does, Judicial Watch is going to be a watchdog on President Trump, and we're going to watch his policies. We've filed Freedom of Information Act requests about the executive orders and things like that. But we also now have to also watch the other government in place in the Trump administration, the alt government, the one that's resisting Trump in an unlawful way, and expose what's going on there. So forget about the ACLU. Your Judicial Watch is the real watchdog here in Washington, and all those lawsuits, some of which don't have any merit. My guess is a lot of them don't have any merit. We're monitoring that, and we may intervene in some of these lawsuits challenging President Trump's lawful national security orders. Also, big news this week, we had new Clinton emails from Huma Abedin. So Huma Abedin, remember the Clinton email, Clinton aide had an email account on Hillary Clinton's server, and we're getting emails from that account on a monthly or so basis from the government. So we're still in the middle of the Clinton email scandal, and the new emails show yet another Clinton Foundation donor who has a shady reputation and a shady past was given access to a State Department luncheon for the Indian Prime Minister as a result of going through Huma Abedin. And we also found in this document that Sidney Blumenthal sent Hillary Clinton the names of operatives, it looked like, in some of our national intelligence agencies, the DIA, the National Reconnaissance Office, and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, which are really top secret. I mean, they're not even well known here in Washington, D.C., but the names of people who work there, as you can imagine, are quite secret, were sent by Sidney Blumenthal to Hillary Clinton, who then shared that with Huma Abedin. And those names were deleted and redacted from the email that Judicial Watch received because they're secret and classified. So once again, we have more information. And by the way, a lot of these new Clinton emails are new in the sense she never turned them over, Mrs. Clinton did initially, as she testified under oath that she did to Congress and suggested that she did under oath to the court in our case. But it shows you that we're still in the middle of the Clinton email scandal. And again, these national security breaches that we're uncovering time and time again show why the Trump administration needs to finally authorize a serious investigation. Not the half-baked investigations under the Obama administration that allowed Hillary to gave Hillary Clinton a get-out-of-jail-free card, but a serious investigation of her national security crimes. Also, we had this week the president nominating Judge Gorsuch to the Supreme Court, seat left vacant as a result of the death of Justice Antonin Scalia. And we issued some statements on this. Judge Gorsuch is a home run of a pick. He's a good conservative jurist. He's got a demonstrated record of being a good conservative jurist, so it's not the trust me sort of attitude, the trust me pick that sometimes we've gotten in the past from certain Republican presidents, that they don't have a record of constitutional jurisprudence, and we're being told just to trust that they do and that they'll be good on the court. Well, here we've got a record that demonstrates that he'll likely be not only good on the court, but a leader for a conservative approach to judicial decision-making. And I'm, for one, am glad that President Trump resisted the temptation that many presidents have fallen into, both Republican and Democrat, to appoint a politician to the bench. There are too many politicians on the bench, and the judiciary needs draining just as much as the rest of the federal government swamp here in Washington, D.C. So the Gorsuch nomination has been put forward to the Senate, and Democrats are saying they want a filibuster. Well, just know what a filibuster means. It means they do not want the Senate to have an up or down vote on Judge Gorsuch. And they say, well, you know, Merrick Garland, Obama's nominee last year, he was denied a vote. And therefore the seat was stolen. Well, that's simply not the case, in the sense that presidents rarely, if ever, get to nominate and get a Supreme Court justice in the middle of an election season. And certainly the issue was litigated on Election Day. Gorsuch was one of the nominees that Trump was putting forward. It was on his list of potential Supreme Court nominees. So the American people knew what they were getting when they elected Trump and obviously put Republicans back in control in the Senate. And so we need to move quickly to get this justice confirmed. And you need individually to share your views time and again with your senators about what you think needs to be done with the Gorsuch nomination. Again, you need to take the time to share your views with the United States Senate about what you think needs to be done with the Gorsuch nomination. And it's easy to do. You can go online and find the number of your individual senators. And don't think just because they're Democrats they won't listen to you. Democrats will listen to the people as well. And they're sensitive to blowback from just because you may think they don't like your point of view doesn't mean they won't listen, and doesn't mean they won't be swayed, and doesn't mean they won't be persuaded to, in the end, oppose a filibuster and allow an up or down vote to proceed. And the number for the Senate, it's easy to remember. It's 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121. And of course, you can go online, write letters, and see your senators at the town halls that they may be holding between now and the vote. It's going to be a long fight, and there should be a debate. It's an important appointment by a president to an appointment to the Supreme Court. The Senate needs to have a say. There should be a debate about how our judiciary should be run, but there needs to be an up or down vote in the end, and we need to get this good man, this good jurist on the bench. So there's a lot going on here in Washington, D.C. I've probably gone on too long as it is, but we're tracking, and we will defend in court, where appropriate, the president's actions to defend the country on national security grounds from the foreign jihadist threat and other national security threats. We stand, we're not, the ACLU is not the only watchdog on issues like this. Judicial Watch is your watchdog here in Washington, D.C. And a lot of new Clinton emails out there, as I said again, and we've got the Supreme Court fight, and we've got the crisis of the government being out of control still. President Trump, it should be known, doesn't have control of the government yet. It's clear with the efforts by the bureaucracies to undermine the elected president of the United States, and not in any legitimate way, but arguably in an unlawful way, and in a way that keeps secrets away from you, the American people who have a right to them under the law. So we're on the top of all of this, and Thanks for joining us this week on Judicial Watch's Facebook Live Update. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you around next week.